as long as both buyer and seller understand the rules of the game. What do you think about a balloon payment? Should you or should you not typically build in a balloon payment? A balloon payment for our audience is a balance paid in full to the seller in most instances. Now you can build in smaller balloon payments, $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, whatever else. But typically when we talk about a balloon payment, it's, hey, you need to pay me in full by getting your own new financing. You got to pay me off within a certain period of time. What do you think? Should that be built into most contracts?
Yes. I build it into all of them, and they're always different. Sometimes it's one big balloon payment. Sometimes it's 10% every January. But yeah, I think you should definitely build it in. But as long as you're aware that they're going to change if you pay additional towards principal. Yeah. As long as everyone's on the same page about that.
Yeah. Shannon, what are your thoughts on balloon payments?
Well, it depends on what your goal is. I mean, if I have a property and I just kind of want this to be my retirement and I want that, that payment for the next 20 years, there's nothing wrong with carrying it that long if that's my goal. But the balloon payment's nice because in a lot of times people are, if they put their house on the market or a property on the market, they're wanting to sell it and they're wanting to cash that out. So if they're going to do that for somebody, typically sometimes they say, okay, we'll give it a couple of years. So yes, most people want a balloon payment in there. They want to know there's an end to it in just a few years. It's just a short-term thing. But really, not everybody is like that. I've known several business owners that have just wanted, I just want that steady income for the next 20 years. They're okay with it. They're okay carrying it for 20 or 30 years because that's just part of their income stream.
Yeah.
I feel like the balloon payment's nice because you can always renegotiate more time. It's not, well, you have to do it now. Some cases it is.
Yeah.
But sometimes if you're working with the buyer and seller, it's just, a more personal deal. Mm-hmm. You can add another 5 years on, renegotiate terms. Maybe interest rates went down, and as a buyer for you, it makes sense to negotiate that interest rate down a little bit, or they went up a lot, and so the seller can make a little bit more on interest, but carry it longer. So, it kind of turns into like I'm like totally blank on everything today. The adjustable rate mortgage, where sometimes it's higher or lower.
It's like having an adjustable rate mortgage.
Yeah. It's a risk one way or another, but it's nice to have the option.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not for everyone, but for people that need it, it's definitely a way to get things done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I typically build in the balloon payment, but there are instances where my in-laws sold us one of their properties. They just wanted the income. Right. So we just amortized it for 15 years and they know they've got a set amount of income for the next 15 years. They love that. And I love that because, we were at an interest rate that worked well for both of us.
And there's no pressure for you to figure out what you're going to do with it in a couple of years.
Yep. But it does make sense to put out in a most other situations, build in a 3, 4, 5 year balloon payment because it allows you to kind of reset at that point. You can continue with the terms that you had, or if the market has gone totally the opposite way, there's opportunities to renegotiate on both sides. So interesting. Paul, jumping to you. What's the big mistake if you don't collect a big enough down payment?
In closing, if you're going through the title company with realtors, you might not have all your bills paid. So you have commissions, you have the fees at the title company, insurance and taxes that you got to get paid. So if you don't take enough, you could be selling your house and actually have to pay at the end.
Fair point. Absolutely.
One point before, I know we're getting short on time. A lot of people think that this is a rent to own or lease to own. This is not that. Yeah. So when it ggets recorded, the buyer it's their house.
Yeah, you do not call the seller to fix the heater.
They're not renters. On the other side, I always have sellers saying, well, we're going to do an annual check. I was like, you can't do that. It's not your house. It's their house.
Yeah.
You're the bank. The bank doesn't come and check on stuff.
There's definitely that ownership component, but that also keeps people in the game more. But we get a lot of calls, and I think the general public doesn't know how to distinguish that. They like to call and say, I'm just looking for a rent to own. Well, we don't do that. Yeah. We don't do that. Why would any seller commit to saying, if you pay me, $1,000 rent for the next, 20 years, I'll just turn it over to you. But in the meantime, you call me when the lawn needs to be taken care of, and you call me when the roof is leaking, and you call me. Nobody rents to own. So I think that, sometimes, people, I know what they're thinking.
Paul did with his boat.
I don't own a boat.
I think that's what people think it is.
Yeah,
it's rent to own. And there's actually a lot more ownership and responsibility in it. You're not everybody would love to just be a renter until you turn the title over to them.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. Nobody's that.
Well,
dumb.
and every seller that I bring a owner finance to, they think that's what it is.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a landlord.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, you're not going to be.
You're a
Yeah.
bank.
But they won't.
You're an investor.
A lot of times they don't.
Yeah.
and
Understand.
sometimes it's the runway to get off the ground. So I use it as a tool oftentimes when the seller has a home that is a little bit harder to sell. They've got an interested party. Maybe they can't get their financing right now, but they're set up. Maybe they started a new company or they're new, but they're being successful. They can clearly afford the home, but it's just not in the cards for them to get conventional financing. It's a runway that you can use for an owner to finally sell that asset. And so in many instances, it can be a great thing, but the big pitfalls are if you don't set it up properly, you can be in big time trouble, as discussed today. In fact, we're winding down on time, but with federal tax liens, with that money not going where it's supposed to, it's not paying the underlying mortgage, the actual property tax bill is not being paid, being underinsured. In other words, people not carrying the proper insurance. You need all of that lined out before you do an owner finance. There's so many pitfalls. That's why you need a competent realtor by your side, holding your hand and taking you through the proper channels.